I'm Molly Thomas, guest hosting for Lorna Dewick this week. Today on Context, is there a connection between vampires, erotica, and Jesus? Who better to ask than best-selling author Anne Rice?
No one does life and death, lovers, and vampires quite like Anne Rice. Just ask any of her legion of readers, and they aren't hard to find. Rice's novels, including the celebrated Vampire Chronicles, have sold upwards of 100 million copies. Having covered an eclectic mix of Gothic fiction, Christian literature, and erotica, Rice says she loves Jesus but has removed herself from the church. Today, meet the woman whose fiction has stirred so much conversation about truths and immortality, and whose books have become a lifeblood, pun intended, for countless millions of readers.
In a moment, Lorna's in conversation with Anne Rice, but first, here's Sheldon Neal with In 60. Sheldon.
Thank you, Molly. Anne Rice has written more than 30 books, from nonfiction to erotica, but she is best known for her Vampire Chronicles. Her breakout 1976 novel, Interview with the Vampire, became one of the top 10 grossing vampire films of all time and starred Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. Her place near the summit of popular culture is secure, with 100 million books sold worldwide and more than 1 million Facebook followers. Her recent book, Prince Lestat, is a sequel to the Chronicles and introduces the global vampire tribe to the current era. Universal Studios is now developing a film franchise based on the Vampire Chronicles. Anne Rice has been public about her faith journey as a Catholic, an atheist, and as a follower of Christ, and says she's turned her back on the church. Her fictional novel about the life of Jesus as a boy, Christ the Lord, out of Egypt, is currently being filmed. She was born and raised in New Orleans, but now calls California home. And now in this special edition of Context, here's part 1 of Lorna's interview with Anne Rice.
Anne Rice, thank you for being with Context.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So vampire literature has been around since the 18th century. Now the movies are earning $3 billion. It's just a phenomenal genre, romantic literature as you would call it. Why are we so attracted to blood-sucking, non-dead characters?
Well, that's a good question. I've always thought the vampire was a powerful metaphor for the outsider in each of us, the predator in each of us, the outcast. I think there's a time in your life, in everybody's life, where a person confronts that he or she feels so different from other people, so alone, so alienated. The vampire is a perfect metaphor for all that. He looks like us, talks like us, and yet he's immortal. He's the undead, as you said, and he has to kill to live, and in a way, we're all killing to live all the time.
Okay, you're just going to jump right in it, because there's a lot of our viewers would be surprised we're talking about vampires and how your books are so full of philosophical questions, really. And I found a deliberate allegory to Christianity as I read this book, now Prince Lestat. You were adamant at one point that you weren't going to return to vampire fiction.
Right, I thought I was finished with it, yeah.
Yeah, tell us why you thought you were finished with it.
Well, I associated it with the dark, depressing periods of my life, with grief and loss, and I felt I had explored my nihilism and my atheism and my grief for my lost Catholic faith. I thought all that was bound up with the vampires for me. And I had returned to the church, returned to being a believer, and I just didn't think that I would go back to the vampires. But then years passed, quite a few years, and I went through many different emotional changes, and my spiritual journey has continued. And I found that I missed my vampire hero, Prince Lestat. I wanted to bring him back, and I wanted to talk through him and with him and about him in a new way.
I want to go back just a couple of steps on the many stages of grief and the different things you went through.
Yeah.
You know, and the most common and most painful experience for people is when we lose our family. So you've gone through what it is to be a widow. You lost Michelle when she was only 5. How has such profound grief affected you and shaped your imagination?
Well, I think grief has shaped everything I've ever written, really. It's shaped the tone of all my books, the subject matter, the style. I grew up in a very old-fashioned Catholic city, New Orleans, in a Catholic family, in a Catholic ghetto. I lost my mother when I was 14. That was a tragic loss. She was a wonderful, vibrant person. And then I lost my daughter early on. And then ultimately I lost my husband, Stan. He suffered a brain tumor, and after 41 years of marriage, he died within about 4.5 months. In one way or another, I've been writing about all this ever since I started out. And I understand that's what we do as writers. We spin the straw of life into gold in what we write, or we try to.
So now, in coming back to the vampire theme, Prince Lestat, is he the character? You said you wanted to write a book with a redemptive framework where Lestat wrestles with the existence of God in a personal way. Have you done that?
Lestat's always wrestling with the question of God. He always is. And he's always wrestling with how can he live a meaningful life when the world sees him as a monster. He's a vampire. He's supposed to be an abomination. But he rebels against that because he didn't choose to be a vampire. And he doesn't know how to be good at being a vampire if this is something other people think is so awful. So he's always wrestling with these questions. How is he going to live his life? One of the Vampire Chronicles, one of the more popular ones that I wrote, is Memnoch the Devil, in which he's visited by a spirit who claims to be the Christian devil and gives him his version of how he's trying to save humanity. And that was all about these questions.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to ask. Is my religious imagination just so active that I saw the allegory to the Christian story? I saw God trying to redeem Lestat, trying to reach into the world here. You weren't looking for any of those themes.
No, but I believe firmly that if you dig into your soul and you tell everything you know in a novel, allegories will be there. You don't have to plan them. You know, they will be there. It depends on how deep you're willing to go. You know, I take fiction very, very seriously. I don't just write for entertainment. You know, I'm writing everything I know in these books. I'm using the vampires as my way of talking about everything that's important to me. So I'm not surprised at the allegories people find in there. They're meant to be there, but they're meant by the subconscious.
Let's talk about completely the opposite of the vampire characters. Your Christ the Lord out of Egypt and Erotica stories.
Right.
Tell me about writing about the life of Jesus as a boy.
Oh, that was the greatest challenge I ever faced as a writer, and those two books, Christ the Lord out of Egypt, Christ the Lord, the Road to Canaan, gave me the greatest joy I've ever had as a writer. Those were the only novels in which I ever attempted to reference something outside of my own alternate reality. I wanted those books to be absolutely biblically correct from start to finish. I didn't want to water down Jesus in any way for a modern audience.
You also say these are the best, you said at the time these were the best book you had ever written, Road to Canaan.
Well, I think so. Yeah, I think the best writing I've ever done, but there are a lot of my readers who just, for various reasons, they're not going to go there, you know. They are as biased against those books as some of my Christian readers are against books about vampires. Then there are some readers who read it all, and they give you very wonderful responses to all of it. But those books, I was determined to do that and yet make Jesus a real living, breathing character in Nazareth on a hot day, you know, for the reader, regardless of whether the reader believed in God or believed in Jesus or believed passionately in Jesus. I wanted to make him real. I wanted to make it a real journey with Christ.
Why? Why was it so important?
I felt that I was in love with the Lord. I was in love with his story. The incarnation is the greatest love story I've ever heard. God comes down, is born with us, grows up with us, works with us, and then dies as we die, and then comes back to show us that we have immortal souls. And I thought, I want to go and imagine the backstory for Jesus, the biblically correct story, but the story of little events that are not in the Bible. Like, what's it like to live in a village where people know your mother supposedly was visited by an angel? What's it like where they're gossiping about the fact that, you know, at your birth, angels sang to shepherds? And Jesus has to deal with that every day. People saying, well, what's so special about you? What was all that about? When are you going to do something here? You know?
And so you had no problem going from the fiction world of vampires to the historical facts that Jesus lived, had angels at his birth,
No.
those things.
No. Well, I grew up Catholic, and spirituality is as real to me as materialism is to anybody else. I mean, we grew up talking around the table about how God loved us and that this was God's world.
How devoted are readers of the Vampire Chronicles? Now, we caught up with some of Anne Rice's fans at Toronto's Inspire Book Festival.
Well, basically, a lot of authors have gone through so many different type of vampire. You have Twilight, you have Anne Rice, it's one of my favorites. You have Bram Stoker, but it's the way she describes them as actual human beings. It's like she goes inside their head, and it's the way she describes them that just keeps me coming back for her.
I think it's the fact that they've been done so many times by so many different people with so many different takes on it that it's fascinating to go through and watch the evolution of how they've been perceived throughout history.
I think the idea of living forever and having that, supernatural power that is kind of alluring. You know, we all wish we could live forever sometimes.
I think with Anne Rice's vampires specifically, she goes into a lot of the history, the Roman Empire and Egypt and things like that. So being able to see all of that and live through thousands of years, I think it's really interesting to see that in a book.
Vampires, I mean, doesn't get more specific than that. Then of course there's always Lestat, who is just fantastic. I mean, you started off at the beginning of the series not liking him very much, and then as soon as you got into book 2 and after there, you're hooked.
I like how there's an entire world built around them. It's not just one character in one space and time. It's the world starts in one place and you get to learn certain characters, but then the mythology continues and it just spreads out and spreads out and spreads out, and you get the sense that the writer has created she's got a backstory for every character that maybe she hasn't told you about, that's maybe not included in the book, but it's there anyways. That's what I love.
When we come back, she was once a staunch atheist, then a champion of Christ when she returned to the church. But now Anne Rice has left organized religion behind. More from the acclaimed author and her thoughts on following Christ in the 21st century. Stay with us.
To add your voice, call us at 1-800-215-4913. Email us at comments@contextwithlorna.com or reach us by Facebook or Twitter.
We love connecting with you through our free draw for the author's books that we feature. So go to our website, contextwithlorna.com, and click on Lorna's books for your chance to win a copy of my favorite Anne Rice book, Christ the Lord, Out of Egypt. If you are a fan of Anne Rice's vampire books, you will love what she's done with the early life of Jesus. Go to our website, contextwithlorna.com, for your chance to win a free copy. Good luck.
Welcome back to our special episode with Anne Rice. Now, her world-renowned vampire novels are not the only reason she's in the headlines. Her view on faith has also garnered much public attention. Here's part 2 of Lorna's interview with Anne Rice.
How do you feel about Jesus' statement that I am the way, the truth, and the life?
How do I feel about Jesus?
What do you believe about that?
I have no theology right now that I could share with any authority with other people, but I believe completely in the existence of God, and I feel a great love for Jesus. And every day of my life, I seek his guidance and ask him to tell me every day what he wants me to do. But as I said, I have no organized theology to offer a person.
You made quite a splash amongst our Christian press when you said, I've got to say farewell to Christianity and to organized religion.
Right.
Do you still feel that way about the church?
I do, very much.
What was wrong
I've chosen
with it?
to seek God outside of organized religion. And I found that there are many, many believers who do that. I'm not alone. I felt very alone at the time, but I got a flood of emails from all over the world from people saying, well, that's the same way I feel. And people going to little independent churches that they did not feel were part of any organized denomination, and seeking fellowship in those places and inviting me to come.
And so you didn't leave Jesus?
No.
You didn't leave a relationship with God?
No, not at all.
It's our structure.
Also, it's fascinating to study 2,000 years of Christianity and note how it has genuinely evolved. Christianity is not the same today as it was in the 3rd century. It's different, and it's going to continue to evolve. But one of the problems you run into many times when you're dealing with your co-religionists is that they insist it's not evolving, it's not changing, it's always been the same, and you're out of step with it, and you should leave. But if you look at that history, if you look at the many ways that Christianity has expanded over the centuries, there's no doubt that it's going to continue to evolve, and we will see wonderful things in the future. We will see great changes in the future. People will look back on this age and wonder, I think they'll ask us, why were you so obsessed with sex? What was it all about for them back there in the 21st century?
I want to ask you about sex, because you do have, it's sprinkled everywhere, and I want to just take a bit of a diversion here. You've written the Sleeping Beauty trilogy.
Right.
We've just exploded into a national conversation in our country about violence against women and about, you know, that whole sexual genre of domination and submission.
Sure.
What are we to say when that very popular world of fiction crosses over into real life? And that's what's launched a conversation in this country. How do you feel about that as a woman?
Well, first off, I feel that the imagination is the place where you can explore the transgressive. It's where you can explore. In literature, that's the place where you can explore the forbidden. You can go there, and you can talk about it. And in writing the Sleeping Beauty trilogy, I was trying to create a very safe place for people who enjoyed fantasies of domination and submission, where nobody really got killed, nobody was ever cut with a knife, nobody was ever really brutalized, but where you had this fairy tale kingdom where people could play games of dominance and submission. It was almost like the theme park of S&M, the Disneyland of S&M. I think it's good. I think it's good to be able to go to that safe place and explore all of these aspects of your psyche and your subconscious, and then move back out of that, back into your safe, ordinary life. There's no reason for it to bleed over. You know, we didn't come out of the movie theater in the 50s after a Western wanting to go shoot somebody, you know.
Okay, here's a movie that might bleed over. Your Jesus out of Egypt is going to be a film.
It's being filmed now in Rome, yes.
And what would you hope will come from that? What is your hope for what that book could become in film now?
Oh, I think the film is going to be wonderful. Cyrus Nowrasteh and Betsy Nowrasteh wrote the script, and Cyrus is the director, and they were very, very faithful to my concerns, is this be biblically correct and theologically correct. And this movie, Out of Egypt, Jesus is a little boy. He's 7, 8 years old in this movie. And I think they've managed to make a really terrific Jesus movie without having to accommodate the scandal and the horror and the cruelty of the cross and what happens later to Jesus. We know that's coming in this movie. We know that he will eventually take the road to Jerusalem and to that terrible Passover weekend when that happened. But we're not there yet in this movie. It's Jesus as a little boy. And it's all of his different feelings as he puts his omniscience aside to try to experience life with us, the way the Gospels tell us that he did, really, you know.
Where you really surprise me and stretch me is in this realm of the imagination. So speak to me now as a woman who loves Jesus, follows Jesus, but you haven't got many guardians around where you invite us to go with our imagination. And quite frankly, you know, my Mennonite background comes out and says, this is not good for me to take my imagination into vampires or into sexual thrillers. Give me my therapy on that. What do you think of that?
Well, the only thing I can offer is the moral compass that I bring to all my work. I don't think that there's anything that I've written ever, whether it's erotica or a vampire novel, that does not have a strong moral compass. And that's really all I can offer to the world. I think God made sex. I think sex is good. I think God cares about how we treat one another. He cares about us being loving beings. I don't see anything wrong with vampire fiction as moral fiction. I never have. Again, I celebrate the imagination, and I celebrate a kind of embrace of the whole world, an embrace of this magnificent biological universe in which we have been born and of which we are witnesses. And I absolutely love being a writer and writing about it in all of these different ways, and I'm not afraid to go. I believe in going all the way with my explorations in these different matters. I feel pretty comfortable with it.
Tell us about your book on angels. What did you capture in your imagination about angels?
Well, I wrote 2 books in a series called Songs of the Seraphim, and I'm going to continue them. And they're about a hitman named Toby O'Dare, who is visited by an angel, Malchiah, a seraph, who says, stop killing people for the government, join with me, repent, turn around, ask the Maker for forgiveness, and become a worker for us. Help us answer prayers. You have some unique talents that we can really use. And Toby, of course, doesn't believe this is an angel. He has to be convinced, but finally he does what Malchiah asks him.
And do you believe angels are real?
You know, there is so much testimony, written testimony today about angels, that if they aren't real, I'd be very surprised. If you explore it, like any field of research, there's just piles of testimony. People claim to have been visited by angels, to have angels save them when they were lost in a snowstorm, to have been protected by angels in various times when they were in danger. It's quite an impressive amount of material, and all through history, we have reports of people who have encountered angels and met angels, and we have all the rich Christian heritage of angels.
And we have the Bible's record.
Absolutely, the Bible's record, the seven choirs of angels, the wonderful descriptions of the Ophanim and the Seraphim and the Cherubim and everything. I love doing research on angels. I love reading all of that, and did a lot of research for my books to get it exactly right. I wanted my angels to be really powerful biblical angels, not watered down Hollywood angels that really want to be human beings.
So I've got religious sensibilities about where I will let my imagination go and where I will not. That doesn't stop you. You don't think I should be limited by that?
No, I let my imagination go everywhere. I mean, to me, the metaphor of the vampire is a very rich metaphor, and that is a great way to talk about God and the devil and good and evil and faith and loss of faith. I mean, I will go wherever my imagination takes me. I think exploring our humanity and exploring our imagination, they're one and the same. And as a writer, that's my world. That's what I feel I can do, and maybe what I was born to do.
So in all of these hundreds of characters you've brought to us all of the imagination creating this fascinating world you've made, where have you felt closest to God in your writing?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer. For better or for worse, when I go to the most frightening and demanding places, I guess I feel closest to God. I feel I'm doing what I hope I'm meant to do. I think living with cosmic uncertainty is human. To live with fear that you may be wrong, that's human. And every night of my life, I pray to God to show me if I'm wrong about anything I'm doing and everything that I'm doing. Please show me if I'm wrong. If the erotica I've written really doesn't have any value, deep psychological value, show me, please, and guide me to some other way of being. So I would say any time that I'm really focusing, and it doesn't depend on any one book. I mean, I felt the greatest consolation when writing the 2 Christ the Lord books. But consolation is not always the gift that one can ask of the Almighty. There are other gifts that He gives us, and fear and trembling and cosmic uncertainty and seeking with one's whole heart, that's maybe more important than enjoying consolation.
Anne Rice, world-famous author, vampire fiction, pop icon. Thank you so much for being with Context.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anne Rice has been stirring worldwide conversation for more than 40 years. Now it's time to see how you at home are responding. Here's Sheldon with a further look into What Do You Think?
Thank you, Molly. We want to know how Anne Rice has stretched your thinking on God, sex, eternity, and Jesus. Should we put limits on our imaginations? Why or why not? Feedback is the lifeblood of Context. Call us at 1-800-215-4913. Write us at comments@contextwithlorna.com. Find us on Facebook and even Twitter at Context TV. We love to sink our teeth. Yes, I said it. There's the pun into every bit of feedback.
And here's more of what Anne Rice's fans had to say at her book signing at the Inspire Book Festival here in Toronto.
It's a very kind of personal question because there so many different people trying to tell you so many different things, and you have your classical, like, religious, and you have your different dominions of the church and different types of church and different religions, and you don't really know what the right answer is, and there's really no way to find out what the right answer is except between you and God.
I think in the everyday, you know, how we treat other people, especially those that are less fortunate than us, that's how I search for him.
I'm not sure. I think God would be something more metaphysical. I think when you see like cosmology and physics and things like that, and the interesting things we have in space and the way that works, I think that would be more of a divine thing to me than a person.
Having grown up with, you know, our faith or whatever, I'm not really a practicing Catholic, but I have been grown up Catholic. I have been educated in the Catholic school system, so God has always been there. It's not like I've been on a mission to find him. He's just been there.
I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God. You know, if other people would like to do that, that's great.
After the break, some final thoughts on vampires, eternity, and Jesus. Do not go away.
To add your voice, call us at 1-800-215-4913. Email us at comments@contextwithlorna.com or reach us by Facebook or Twitter.
We love connecting with you through our free draw for the author's books that we feature. So go to our website, contextwithlorna.com, and click on Lorna's books for your chance to win a copy of my favorite Anne Rice book, Christ the Lord, Out of Egypt. If you are a fan of Anne Rice's vampire books, you will love what she's done with the early life of Jesus. Go to our website, contextwithlorna.com, for your chance to win a free copy. Good luck.
The only thing missing from today's conversation is you. To add your voice, call us at 1-800-215-4913. Email us at comments@contextwithlorna.com or reach us by Facebook or Twitter. We see, hear, read, and value all feedback.
This segment is brought to you by Bruce Etherington and Associates, Family Harmony and Philanthropy, helping you help others.
Great books challenge your thinking. They inspire, they evoke, but most of all, they remind us that the imagination is a powerful gift from God. Now, as the abundant success of Anne Rice demonstrates, an uninhibited imagination opens people up to boundless possibilities. Now, she believes God gives us this innate tool to explore without limits everything from Gothic creatures to sexual fantasies to faith and Jesus. Now, in this, she grapples with the words of yet another highly successful author. In Romans 12, Paul writes, "Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." On behalf of Lorna and the entire Context team, I'm Molly Thomas. Thank you so much for watching. Join us next week as we explore life beyond the headlines.
There's different ways to use your imagination. I think in a creative way, you should let your imagination run wild, and you know, there's so many things to explore and so many things out there to create, and I think using your imagination in a creative way is very good. But I mean, there are some ways that sometimes I think in some situations you should limit your imagination. But I mean, I think in overall context of it, I think it's good to, you know, have a wild imagination.
As kids, I think maybe now, maybe in the world that we're growing up in, we're kind of taught maybe not to imagine and to dream and to go into the kind of those things so much. So it's a really sad thing that that's kind of been squashed down, because you want to, you know, have that burst of imagination, and even for our age, to imagine and to, you know, sometimes we're stuck so much in front of books and told just to write and do stuff. You want to be creative and to do stuff, but I mean, just like Matt said, you want to, you know, have that control and to keep things good and positive and what God has blessed us with.
It's not too late to send us your comments. The conversation continues.